Hi guys. So today I kind of want to talk about Jaguar Falls, and specifically, I guess I'll do the just the theory on the push and the capture. I'll start with the capture. So capture is pretty basic, and that's not really so much to talk about. Basically, high ground. Both teams are going to be here, and then they have one or two players going through the middle or dial. So you really have to look at your team composition. Okay, so I'll talk about this composition that we had in Serpent Beach against Bulls. This was yesterday on Tuesday. So the idea is you have to look at the team composition and realize which of the champions that can play here and which of the champions that can play here. So on our team composition, it's basically Ruckus, Maeve that can play from this side. A Shaolin could kind of, but it's not so effective, so not that many teams. You won't see it very often unless they're doing something specific and not going for this typical fight. But you just gotta assume the Shaolin's gonna be here most of the time. Cassie is typically gonna play here, not always though. Ash can go through the middle and around. Ash can go through here and through here. Drogos with worm jets, he often plays on this side. With combustible, it's always here. Grover is going to be playing here. What Nip, no, not Nip, Niva does is they put their Grover on this high ground and they make sure everybody stays here. So they put like tanks here and then Grover there, and then this has an amazing angle. But typically a Grover's gonna be here. I guess you could put him here as well, or even there. So yeah, so now we kind of know where their champions, all the possibilities that they can be. So you should never be surprised if you see one there. You just gotta kind of be up here, and then you check out. Okay, they have this many people here, and then think about the champions that are missing, and then look at the positions where they could be. What we can do is Maeve can play here. She can also play high ground, even though I definitely like her more here. So typically she'll be here. Ruckus can play in the middle. Typically what he does is go to this high ground here. Barrack's almost always going to be here, unless you're running maybe solo tank, or you're with a very effective tank that can just like a Makoa, and then the Barrack on point, or Ash and the Barrack on point. Anyways, the Barrack on point is really only to stop somebody else from flanking. So if you're playing Barrack against the Ruckus, you would put your Barrack here, for example. Or if you're against two offensive tanks, you could put the Barrack here and one tank here. Or you would actually, specifically, you would put him here so he can see if anybody's coming, so he can stop that. And then if they're both high ground, you would make him follow through there. So the most important thing about this high ground fight is considering who has more poke and who has more defense. So in this composition, we've got Shaolin that'll be up here, and they've got typically Grover, Drogos maybe. Or it's either the Cassie or the Drogos. They're going to pick one to put here and one to put here. I'd imagine they put the Cassie at dial and Drogos up here. So the idea is you look at the poke. We've got Shaolin, we've got Ruckus. Barrack's not too bad at poke either. And that's, I would say, more reliable poke than what they have. Well, I don't know. In this composition, it's pretty much even. I would say I don't think you can say which one has the better poke, because Grover's pretty, like, he's got good poke, but it's very unreliable. Where you can see the axes coming from far away, and you can kind of dodge them if you're good enough. While with Shaolin, it's much harder. Like, you can't really look at when he shoots his bullet and then move just to dodge it. So the Shalin has more reliable poke. Both of the damage is about the same. The Drogo Salvo zones you out of an area, so then you can't be here poking, but you gotta be here, which reduces the angle. So that reduces a bit of our poke. And then you have to look at the tanks. Ash has a very small shield, so he won't be blocking any of the poke. And Barrack has a big shield, so he will be blocking like the Drogo Salvo. So I would say from just the poke battle, our team wins. So given that we win the poke battle, what we could say is just send everybody high ground and we can go hard. That's a viable option because then we push them back into this area. The reason why the poke battle is so important is obviously the high ground is very important, and if you get them leaking off of this high ground, as soon as you poke somebody out and they drop down, then your tank can go very aggressive, or your tank can go very aggressive with anything, right? Like with an ulti or just like put him here. He'd typically be fine if you have more poke. So the more poke you have, the more aggressive you can be without major cooldowns. That's pretty much it for the standard fight, and then once it gets a bit messy, it just comes down to like once you poke them out, you want 1 DPS. How do I just do it? You just want 1 DPS here, 1 DPS here, 1 DPS here. If they're still contesting the point, obviously, you'll probably have your support staying up here that can also come here, and then you'll have a tank. And that's only if they like you only want to split up your DPS. The reasoning is if you've got multiple angles to poke them out, that's just better. I would keep the Ruckus would typically stay offensive. The Shaolin could stay in the back. The Maeve could be up here as well, or the Maeve could be derping around trying to do well at the dial. So the idea is that's only when they're still at the point. Once they're at the point, then you don't want your Shaolin anymore here because you gotta zone them. So then Shaolin would come here, Ruckus would probably come here. Alright, that's enough for the capture. I think it's pretty basic and everybody kind of knows how to play it. Alright, so now kind of what we've been struggling against, the push. There's a lot of different ways to push, especially now it's changed a lot more with like in the past meta, it's been very hard to push because you've got a lot of low ground champs. I think there was a picture, and this is how I think Bird's team Nip fucked up. What the fuck, these pictures, dudes? So here you see it very obvious. This is like a very old school, like a month ago, the meta, and they're playing it very. I guess they're just picking up the Ruckus. I'm surprised. Yeah, they don't have a Maeve. I guess they don't want to play with the Grover. Yeah, they wanted the Cassie again with the Shaolin, I guess. But yeah, the point is only 1 high ground champ, and here they've got 2. So, but now in the meta, you would see like maybe a Ruckus, a Drogos, or a Bomb King, and a Maeve instead of Leon. So that would be 3 champions that can go high ground. So this is back to the meta where there are a bunch of flankers, so it changes a bit, and I want to talk about that change. So this is and look at this. They've got 2 high ground champs. We've got 1, 2. I guess we've only got 2. So let's first talk about the old meta. So like how this team would go about capturing and pushing. So the most important part, or there's like different steps. That's how I want to explain it. It's about capturing this high ground when the payload is between this bridge, like the point really, until this point. That's when this high ground you really gotta capture it. And the idea, what they would do is they put long range DPS on this high ground. So I'll use green for long range DPS. So you put long range DPS here, and you would keep. I kind of want to talk about with the other. With this, it's more applicable. So here we would keep our Shaolin here. We would keep somebody like Ruckus that can easily engage. So Ruckus would be playing around here. So the idea is the long range DPS looks at this high ground. If anybody is up there, he calls out, let me poke them out first. He pokes them out first. As soon as they retreat, this is the moment you tell Ruckus to go in. Because they can't, once they're standing here, they can't see the Ruckus coming anymore. So then the Ruckus goes, and then then you kind of like poke out this battle while you free push this payload. And then once the payload is here, you have, so this is the next step. The idea is that they're going to be standing in these areas, and they're going to try to come here still, but hopefully we have this captured and we just keep the Ruckus up here. But they're going to be threatening this point. So the idea is this. Now the next step for this payload, this back line, what they're going to try to do a lot is keep this back line a long range DPS here. And that angle for this small push here, so the next step is to this line. And that's where this payload, this line comes into like a perfect angle. How to capture this line. So you've got two options. If you're running, and it also kind of depends which champion's up here. So say we're defending, how I would take it with this comp. We would put our Shaolin here, and then you gotta realize Cassie's like ideal for that line. I guess you could kind of have him distracted with a Grover at this point, or just like on the low ground, poking him out there. Even though I don't like Grover on the low ground that much. On the high ground here, poke him out. It's okay. You could have Grover playing like both of these, I guess. So the most ideal thing though is sending Cassie through the low ground. How do you do that? Is you gotta play your Ashe on the left side. You gotta just like once the payload hits here, Ashe stops playing point because he realizes right now they have too much poke for me to be on point. So we have to take care of their poke first, get these positions before we can start pushing this. And once the poke is dealt with, you can also just put your support here. So the idea is with Ashe, typically they're on the defense. When the payload is here, you have one tank playing here and one tank playing here. So on the defense, you can't be here anymore because you're gonna get poked out. They've got a tank there anyways. It's very hard to out poke if they've got better positions to poke you. So that's why you send your tank to this green circle and you force them back. And then with Cassie, so basically you're putting Cassie here and then he gets a few rolls and tries to get past. Then the other thing they could try is going with Drogos and going around. They could try with like if they're not respecting the high ground, you could go through here with Grover or Drogos. The idea is you gotta focus this back line once the payload hits here. So I guess that's the next step, and then the last push till here. You've got the ideal situation. So you've got the long range DPS up here, and then you just don't stack. Put one person up here so they can't flank around you, and then you just kind of, this last part is very easy, and that should all, like if you get the payload to here, this is like when the ultimates start mattering way more. Once the payload is here, that's like when you want to start using your ultimates, because then your win condition is those ultimates rather than the positions that they have. And then typically you'll see like the long range DPS sticking up here for the defense, or here, but this one's more dangerous because they can flank around. Like you're gonna have your Mave up here trying to push him out, while the Mave would have a difficulty getting here. But on the other hand, and also this angle is much better. You can get the whole, like they'd have to, the long range DPS would have to be hiding from here, while otherwise from this angle the maximum is like you can still be here and then poke the point, so you can't poke him out from this position. Alright, so now with the meta kind of changing, what's been ignored often is just because you don't have enough high ground champions. I guess I'll use purple. Is this high ground and this entrance, and this is what Mave opens up very, very hard. So the idea is, if you've got your long range, so we're talking about two different things. It's more kind of like it works for both of these, step 1 and step 2. So you put your long range DPS here, you've still got your ruckus here. What you could do instead is saying we're going for the right side of the map play. You could put your ruckus here, so he's got a bit better angle. You poke them out, like faking that you're going here, but then you just send your Mave up to this high ground, and then you, once you start pressuring from this side, then you can, as soon as like Mave has got this bridge covered, then you send your ruckus here, and then you've got two angles to start fighting the high ground. Yep. So what I hope to start doing is start thinking about these step. Oh, that should be red. Step 1, step 2, and step 3. It should be moved a bit, but whatever. Step 3, you get it. Just gonna check how long the video is. 19 minutes. Alright. So now I think for voice communication, I think we'll start calling out which step we're on, so everybody definitely knows what their role is. We'll also try to say capture the left one or the right one. And then everybody thinks about that, that's our goal. So then you kind of, like the ruckus should have to realize he's going to be pretty useless until this area is a bit poked out. And then he should realize he should go here instead of there if we're saying we're going to capture the right side first. The reasoning is that from here he has very shit angles to poke this high ground, but from here he's still helping with the high ground poke, so you just got more tools to poke them out. Second thing is, if you're trying to capture the right side high ground, then you can't help him get a Mave like if you gotta poke people out of this area, you gotta be able to help with that. You can't just stand here waiting for this high ground to get poked out. Alright, I'm gonna end the video here. I think that was some information, and we can practice it and see how it goes.